Hi, everybody. Welcome to our wonderful program for African American History Month. It's African Americans and Labor. Welcome to our panel discussion on the very topic. My name is Jana Weiss, and I'm the Student Life Coordinator for Online College, and thank you for coming today. We have some wonderful panelists here with us today, and I'm going to introduce our wonderful moderator. G.L. Harris is a writer, journalist, cultural curator, and blogger with special interest in the history of indigenous peoples of North America, Africa, and the African diaspora. As a journalist, Ms. Harris has contributed to nationally syndicated newspapers, small and independent press. She has worked as a producer and on-air host in commercial radio in New England and a public radio station in Washington, D.C. Ms. Harris wrote for the Burlington Free Press and the Times-Argus newspapers in Vermont, the Afro-American newspaper in Washington, D.C., and the Virginia Pilot in Virginia. Her work has been featured in the UK-based Black Filmmaker magazine, New England Film magazine, Urban Influence magazine, and publication of the National Urban League, the National Society of Black Engineers magazine, African American Voice newspaper, and the Network Journal, and many more. As a cultural arts curator and film programmer, Ms. Harris produced a film program to commemorate the first African landing at Point Comfort with Project 1619 in Hampton, Virginia. And she presented the first Black History Month film in Vermont. She hosted the African Diaspora International Film Festival and was the official festival blogger for the film distribution company based in New York City. Please welcome our wonderful moderator today, Ms. Harris.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I'm going to just share some notes and thoughts about labor, and then I'm going to introduce everyone. But just to kind of give context to today's program, which was organized by Jana, wonderfully, Ms. Weiss, I should call her. But I wanted to just open with my understanding of when we think of labor and African American labor, particularly, specifically, a context and just very short overview of where it derives. The first Africans were kidnapped and brought to English North America came from the Kingdom of Ndongo. The highly advanced societies were invaded by the Portuguese in the late 1400s, which eventually set in motion transatlantic slave trade. In 1619, the San João Batista ship sailed from the port of Luanda, Angola, with over 350 enslaved Africans bound for Vera Cruz in the colony of New Spain. As the slave ship transited the Bay of Campeche, two English privateer ships, the White Lion and Treasurer, attacked the San João Batista and seized 60 Africans. The privateers, looking for refuge and supplies, sailed north until reaching Port Comfort in present-day Hampton, Virginia in August of 1619. The enslaved Africans were brought ashore and traded for supplies, after which they were sold to colonists throughout the area, including Jamestown. This historical event changed the course of the history from the early years of Virginia colony to the founding of America and into the future. The perseverance, resiliency, and courage of the men and women who arrived at Point Comfort ensured the survival of the nascent colony. In 2010, members of the Hampton community came together to create Project 1619 Incorporated, a nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving this important history. Organizations such as Project 1619 Inc. and the William Tucker 1624 Society continue to inform the design and creation of a planned memorial. The Fort Monroe Authority, which is a decommissioned base, military base, the Fort Monroe National Monument, numerous organizations and members of the descendant community are working towards the creation of a memorial near the site of the landing of the first enslaved Africans at Point Comfort, present-day Fort Monroe in Hampton, Virginia. And I was able to obtain that information from the 1619landing.org. And it is actually under the National Parks and Services. So it is a historic landmark and has a lot going on in terms of just having information about early American history. But how that gets us to labor, as it's commonly understood, enslaved Africans and other people, other groups, because it wasn't just Africans, but other groups performed not only domestic but skilled labor for the early colonists. And of course, they were unpaid. In Virginia specifically, because there were not in the English colonies initially, at that point, legalized standards about enslavement for life, or the American chattel slavery system as we came to understand slavery in America. So people may have commonly heard of indentured servitude, and in many cases it did apply to some African people. However, some people were able to work out of slavery, but because of the laws of the land and so forth, a lot of times that was short-lived and did not perpetuate itself for generations. So I would like to, first of all, say hello to Ms. Afhami. Ms. Afhami, are you a student or are you a faculty? Just wanted to acknowledge you. I don't know if she can speak or not. Is she one of our students? Excuse me. Jana, can you unmute? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Hello. Hello.
Hi. We
I'm
just
a
want to
faculty.
welcome you.
Hello.
Okay, nice to meet you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
So you're welcome. So I wanted to begin to introduce our incredibly diverse and talented panel that we have. I wanted to begin with Dr. Brandon Pearson. Dr. Pearson earned a doctoral of management in 2022. His dissertation presented achieved a milestone, is termed Exploring the Water Management Industry's Career Pathway Program and Career Options in Southeast Texas School Districts. And Dr. Pearson can correct me if I've spoken on his dissertation. His additional contributions to environmental and social sustainability are the textbook entitled Sustainability Management Institute Gold Book, and also various articles displayed on an Access platform, Substack. Dr. Pearson offers research and education to advocate for human capital development. Next up, we have Ms. Carla Lane, who serves as the president and CEO of Lane Staffing, a position she earned through unwavering dedication and strategic leadership. She's a proud alumna of the University of Houston. Ms. Lane embarked on her career journey as accounting clerk at a small staffing agency. Ambition, she declared during her initial job interview that her ultimate goal was to acquire the company from its owner. She is an active member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the Links Incorporated, and an honorary member of Iota Phi Lambda Incorporated. Ms. Lane exemplifies the values of sisterhood and community engagement. and she is a devoted mother of one daughter and has a very basic philosophy, simple philosophy, she says, of work hard, savor life's moments, and give back to make a positive impact. So, and next up, we have Mr. Jackson, Washington Jackson III, and he is the founder and CEO of My Chance of Houston. He is an experienced chief administrator with a demonstrated history of working in nonprofit organizations management industry. He's also skilled in nonprofit organizations, partnerships, organizational management, strategic planning, and administration. He's the co-author of the two multi-million-dollar award-winning federal grant projects, and he also helped Advance get awarded a Capital One grant and a Comcast community grant. So I want to welcome our panel here today. And I just want to open up by asking a question to each of our panelists. What is labor?
I'll go first by answering that question. First, thank you, and I appreciate everybody for being on this panel. To me, I look at labor from a definitive term, which is some type of action that's needed to provide a good or a service. Within the context, people can make labor something that's beneficial to a group or something that's beneficial to the general public, such as like a Good Samaritan that provides some form of labor. Regardless of the reward that Good Samaritan received, it doesn't shape the definition of labor. So to me, I look at it in a very small definition, but it's something that can be defined by the person provided that labor as well too.
Thank you, Dr.
And-
Pearson.
In
Ms.
staffing,
Lane?
when we talk about labor, it can be the work product, like Mr. Pearson said, but also it is, people refer to general labor or laborers as the people that are doing the work. And so there's a couple of definitions, I think, that when we start to talk about labor, even so as labor, when we think about it, a lot of times we don't even think about professional work as labor in the staffing industry. So it is a term that can be used in a lot of different ways. But it also is, in my opinion, it's probably shaped by what I've done as far as my career, but it is really the bedrock of commerce. It is really the foundation of all that we produce in this country. And you start talking about the gross national product and all of that, it's based on labor. It's based on the work that we do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, so it's great to be a part of this panel, and for all of the guests, thank you for joining us. Labor in the aspect of nonprofit realm is ultimately serving people, and reaching common goals to serve them, right? And so when you're serving someone, and as far as labor is concerned, you have to know what the need is. And so communicating and understanding and listening to the need of the community in which you operate in, the community that you grew up in, is kind of giving you that. They will give you the answer and tell you what you need to serve. And that produces labor, that builds and creates opportunities, jobs, and also results, right? You can help towards completing some kind of task or moving something forward. And in my case, reducing divorce rate or reducing domestic violence, things of that nature. So it's the opportunities are unlimited in labor in nonprofit work.
Thank you. I wanted to ask each of you, can you talk about or give us an example of historical labor and and what it means as a point of reference to you in your area of expertise.
I think that labor, from my point of reference of expertise, just in context of my career background and education, it's uh, very dependent on, I guess you could say, cultural conditions. For people in the United States, there's resources and there's opportunities available that's probably not available in other nations. And so what we do is not relative in other places. For example, if I was to take a certain set of laws that's available in the United States and compare them to the set of laws that's available maybe in a nation in Africa, they're going to be entirely different. So my background is in water treatment. So if I was to take the laws that's applied in the United States about water treatment and compare them to the laws that's applied in Africa for water treatment, they're going to be significantly different because the United States has legislation, statutes, and ordinances. And so the local, the state, and the federal government has a lot to offer in terms of water treatment, whereas in Africa, there's going to be different standards. And so the standards that's required in the United States directly affects the labor that I provide and that other people provide. And so being that it's something that's water treatment that's regulated geographically and politically, there's going to be different needs. And so that need is always going to be around, and it's always going to be a demand for that labor. The important part is for people to understand that even though there's a demand, there should be still be some form of integrity, due diligence, and also emphasis to ensure that water protection is taking place. So in terms of ensuring that a certain culture, such as like maybe a good old boy club or some type of nepotism isn't taking place and hindering the industries, I think it's important that people understand the labor market in terms of the water industry and how important it is for people to receive that service.
I wanted to just, before we move on to the next person to answer that question, as you were talking about water treatment, what came to mind for me and may even be more, it may follow sort of the question I was asking in terms of a historical premise. So did you find in your dissertation about and studying water treatment and the history of it in this country, that there were at a certain point, as you talked about standardization, laws that were made in the space of water treatment to protect the workers? Because we, as you say, we do have codes and compliances in this country and in every industry. And we, of course, have departments, or formerly have had departments in Washington, D.C., that deal with things like OSHA, workplace safety. So can you just very briefly, just to follow up before we move on, talk about that, if you found any information in your research about maybe, I remember as a very young child, there was an incident called the 9 Mile, somebody can jump in if I'm getting it wrong, but the 9 Mile treatment, and it had to do with waste and runoff. And I believe it happened in Pennsylvania. And as a result of that incident, because it was like huge toxic waste, people were impacted in that community. We've certainly seen films cover these kinds of ideas where water, in Michigan, they had problems with water. So, but I'm kind of asking the question, is there a correlation between protections for workers, for the labor segment that came as a result of standards in water treatment?
That's a good question. And there's been, and to just briefly, many of the environmental laws in the United States were based on past events, either in the nation or maybe somewhere else. So the Clean Water Act was the result of a event that took place in Ohio, and others, just briefly, other legislation were the results of past events. And so there's always been an emphasis on safety in terms of ensuring that these events don't affect humans, plant, animals, or wildlife. But in terms of employee safety, um, the general overview in any legislation, which is a federal law, is these owners and operators of these facilities should apply the best practices for protecting their workers. In terms of any type of distinct legislation that specifically states workers should not, maybe receive some type of illness or issue due to a hazardous element, that's yet to be seen. But the laws are very general, but similar to other legislation and statutes, they're up for kind of people's determination of what a best practice is. So if the federal government prescribes the best practice for protecting these workers, then it's up to the state and the local officials to put those situations in place. And just one last thing, there are safeguards that's in place that more technical that these owners and operators have to abide by to ensure that people aren't being hurt, such as protective equipment whenever they're working in the facility or when they're working out in the field. So there are safeguards and there are standards such as protective equipment. But for the most part, people should just be mindful of their environment and then always apply the best practices when available.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to ask Jana excuse me, Ms. Vice, to unmute. I apologize. I don't multitask and I missed what you wrote.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I always think about the New York City early 1800s, the outbreaks from, and they traced it back to the contaminated water system that cholera was happening. And that's kind of where I kind of think of when it first comes to wastewater contamination. It's like way back in the early days where they didn't know these. And so now we have these standards and everything that we've set in place because of these outbreaks.
Right. Thank you. Okay. And then I wanted to, if Carla, if you would like to talk to the historical underpinnings or just a reference point for you that would be personal about your field and your expertise. And if they're just, I'm not saying anything because I don't want to color what you're saying, but just if you could tell us a little bit about any touchstones for you with regard to your area.
So when I think about the history, I've worked in staffing for 30 years, and it's changed over the years. And when we think about African Americans and employment, initially, in the early 90s, a lot of the jobs that were occupied by our community were manufacturing and service jobs. And that has evolved a lot. Today, it is technology and healthcare. A lot of that is because of education and our access to education and the finance to support that. And then as we start to look at the evolution now with automation and outsourcing, the employment landscape is changing yet again. And that's why we see a lot of the developments of workforce development programs so that people can retool themselves to get ready for what is coming, because a lot of those jobs are going to go away. And so we're going to have to move to a place where we're educating ourselves and we are learning critical thinking skills so that we can use AI and those things in a way to make life better because it's coming. Robotics is going to change a lot of those service-related jobs. And so a focus on technology is going to be important. Again, critical thinking skills. It is amazing to have a nonprofit on the panel because of networking and mentorship is going to be essential as we look to employment opportunities. And I'm always going to talk about Lane Staffing. It is what I do. Organizations like myself that have relationships with employers are going to be essential because what happens when these companies put opportunities out there, especially with the layoffs that are happening, literally hundreds of people are going to apply for those jobs. And it is going to be essential that we have relationships that allow us to get to people who can make hiring decisions. So I think that we are on the verge of another big shift when it comes to employment. And for those who are looking and trying to figure out what is next, what's your next big move, technology and healthcare, that's the answer.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mr. Jackson, can you talk about a historical idea or event that is germane to nonprofit work and nonprofit labor? And I'm kind of getting at the idea, and thank you, Ms. Lane, for what she did, because she talked about the past, because she's talked about how labor has changed over 30 years. But even if we go back earlier with the emergence of nonprofits, which in some cases were an offshoot of, in many communities, we think of it sometimes in the African American community, but even going back to like England, because that's kind of our European reference point, when you think about charities, how like a lot of the movements of women, they were engaged in small groups to help because they had charitable organizations to help orphans or, you know, children that had lost their parents probably through labor, because these people were doing high risk labor. And, you know, as Ms. Weiss had mentioned about the cholera epidemic, we didn't have state-of-the-art healthcare, you know, in the 17th, 18th, and early 19th century. So people had sometimes a much shorter lifespan and higher risk, especially during the industrial era in this country, you know, early manufacturing, you know, when there were a lot of risks. So when I think about nonprofits, and I'm not the expert, and I have a puppy in the house, so if you guys hear barking in the background, it's a little color. But so just again to my question, Mr. Jackson, about like nonprofits, did you, when you were starting, and I know you have quite an amazing background, but did you look to earlier movements in nonprofit, or what was the basis of your desire to move into your area?
That's interesting. Thank you for that question. It's kind of like you want to help in the capacity that another agency is not willing to help, right? Whether that's community oriented, culture oriented, or just people oriented. You're like, "Well, it's more that we can be doing. It's way more tangible things that we can be doing," and that's what kind of birthed the idea. I came from uh, uh, juvenile probation for years, right? And then in a kind of limited capacity, and went to another agency as a youth coordinator and left a multi-million-dollar grant writer, right? And so I would say, no matter what the occupancy is, no matter what the job area is, several things that Dr. Brandon and Ms. Carla mentioned before is several things in your brand. We all have our own brand, right, that we carry and that we develop along the way. Integrity is a huge implement that you keep, right? Stewardship, right? You have plan A, B, and C, And if those don't work, be willing to create plan D, right? Your purpose and your passion can go in any occupation that you shift gears in. Like Ms. Carla said, sometimes you may be a school teacher and that may not be enough, or you might do that for a few years and it shifts, right? And the point of the history for me and on my outlook is times have changed, they're changing again right before our eyes, and we have to be adaptable, right? My deposit on this panel would be to allow yourself to be versatile and flexible, all right? And nothing that you're feeling and nothing that you're experiencing is not for any reason, for no reason. It's all purposeful, right? And so if you're on this job for 3 years and you start a family and you're trying to finish school and you have family issues come up or financial issues come up, it's all still gonna work towards where you're going. And so be willing to grow and be willing to learn. I know one of the panelists, my shared panelists mentioned about relationships. Relationships are key. Even the people that you're in class with right now, you never know where they're going to end up, or they may need you or you may need them. So I will cultivate all relationships and keep those opportunities and doors open. And you just, it's brick by brick, right? And so for nonprofit, I would say it may be something in your family or your extended family that somebody has an issue or dilemma with, and you don't see it in society being geared to or catered to, and that may be the birth of your nonprofit to create wheelchair ramps. I don't know, but it's different things that can inspire for you to get there.
I do want to stay on, first of all, thank you for that answer. And I want to just kind of follow up again with you, Mr. Jackson, put you on the hot seat. But when I also, as you were sharing and you were talking about what kind of led you into nonprofit work, I'm also wondering, because I think you have a divinity degree, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
So I'm wondering, because as you were also sharing that how people think of nonprofits has changed. And you were talking about the adaptability and versatility of the nonprofit world. And my question is, I think a lot of times we don't think initially of faith-based organizations as nonprofit. So, and faith is very broad, and I personally honor, all faiths. But I think, especially, thinking of Black History Month and the conversation today, the Black church has been a big part of the advancement of the African American community, both in terms of civil rights and also in terms of things like, as Ms. Lane had mentioned earlier, education, networking, community. So just to talk a little bit about that, can you kind of just underscore a little bit about if your faith played a role in your development in nonprofits, and also how you saw yourself maybe having your organization being different than traditional faith-based organizations?
Absolutely. I live by faith, right? And so in the nonprofit realm or circuit, it's a very distinct line that you don't spew your beliefs on another person, right? But what I hold intact is my my value for my teammates, my staff, the people that we serve. It's your value, right? And just a quick example of that is I was explaining to my staff at one point about our success and what does success look like, right? And then they were like, "Well, Mr. Washington, what do you think?" And I told them, I said, it's kind of like the church that you go to and the things that you see them do in their ministries, the work that we were doing in this nonprofit, we were feeding people through the weeks, not only the people, but their kids, right? For weeks at a time. And I got them to see that it didn't matter if somebody looked like me, don't look like me, raised how I was raised, whatever. Through this body of work, we were able to make real tangible impact, and they could see it, right? And so promoting that kind of value and letting them kind of see nonprofit work as more than just nonprofit work, but real tangible impact was very huge. And so of course, leading and having those visions and things of that nature in all of the realms from fed to local, it's all faith driven for me.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. I know we do want to open it up for questions for our guests that we have. However, I would like to just sort of, if I can, maybe ask everybody to do we'll do a quick, 1 minute bonus round. I just want to, and just by way of kind of closing out, because everyone has brought, I think, very different and distinct ideas to not only illuminate the idea of labor in a very kind of broad way, but also kind of speak to their personal story and journey. So I want to kind of, as a last question, ask everyone, and Ms. Vaz, if you want to answer too, that would be awesome, just about community, the idea of how community can help, in this case, students on their journey to work, to labor, and just how each of you all might be available to assist with that. And just however you want to answer it is fine. And just something very quick, about a minute or so for each of you all. So just the idea of community and how those of us, who are in leadership capacities in a community can be of service.
I'll go first, and briefly, I want to speak from experience. To me, community is something that that drove me to reach my potential. What I didn't get out of maybe school or work or family life or friendships, I was able to get out of community. I come up from a community where everybody was active either as tutoring or as offering some type of assistance, social, economical, or some type of cultural assistance to help me be the best person that I could be. And so for me, I feel like paying it back to those people in the form of helping others is a way that I can give back. And so my platform is good for adult education and just workforce development. So anytime I could be a resource, I would appreciate that opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson.
So I'll jump in and just kind of reinforce the idea about employment and employment opportunities and preparing yourself for the workforce. I own a staffing company, but I started working in staffing when I was at U of H, getting an accounting degree. I started as a payroll clerk, and it was a small business that I worked for, and their mentorship enabled me to buy their company from them. That's mentorship. And for me, that set in motion. I am a person who, though I own a staffing company, I help people start staffing companies all the time because that's what community does. And I think if we're going to make an impact on our community, it has to be that we have to do the work. Nobody's going to come in and do it for us. And so I'm a mother. My daughter is at Tuskegee University in vet school, but she was mentored by Tuskegee vets here in Houston. That is how you create pathways. And those people pushed her forward and connected her to people that said, hey, we're getting you to Alabama. So I would say to any student, use your community, use the people you're sitting next to, get to know your professors, use your voice. If you want something, there is someone who has done what you want to do. You go find them, and you become someone they know and you develop a relationship. Mentorship will open doors. I have people who help me that I have seen in person 2 or 3 times, but I will get on the phone, I email them articles, and when I need something, they come through because of the relationships that I've built. And I'm saying that
Right.
as an example, not as a brag, because somebody told me that, Carla, if you want to go do something, go find somebody who's done it. That is my advice. When we talk about lane staffing,
Right.
and you can go to our website, lanestaff.com, we put people to work. We put people to work, and then when people are not ready to go to work, we'll fix your resume. We'll teach you how to interview. I've got a clothing closet. I'll give you some clothes because we're doing the work of helping people find employment. It's important, and that's how you participate in this country. You got to have some money, and if you're gonna have some money, you probably gonna have to work. At least I do. Nobody's giving it to me, so go to lanestaff.com and we will put you to work. And I'm gonna give you the phone number. It is 713-522-0000, and we'll put you to work.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Lane. Mr. Jackson.
And I'll briefly share this. I'm a grant writer now, but nobody taught it to me. It was self-taught, right? Through observation and the will to want to know how to be able to do this work, or obtain funding to be able to do this work, right? And so I say that to say is invest in yourself. The skills that you lack, gain them, right? Don't wait around. It's something that you're interested in, research it, develop it, right? Find somebody else that is doing that or moving on that wave. And I will also just in transparency, I would like to say that you're gonna get knocked down a couple of times in this on this journey, especially in the workforce, right? Sometimes the deck is gonna be stacked against you. You may be the only integrity in the room. That's fine. Take it, right?
Little
And keep moving
bit. Oh, okay.
and keep
Cleared back
and
up.
keep moving forward. You will be knocked down. Be the integrity in the room, even if it's you're the only one. And when you do start making strides and you obtain this position or that position, do pay it forward. Remember what the journey was. That it's other people coming along behind you that have kids or starting families and taking care of their parent at the same time. That you pay it forward and look out for them as well. And my last thing is stay encouraged. Always keep your value in mind and stay encouraged. And good luck to everybody.
Mhm.
She may have been having technical issues, Jenna, but there she is.
She's back. Now you're on mute, Miss Harris.
I don't know
There you
what
go.
happened, but it seemed to push me out, but I can see you guys. Thank you guys. I thought we had run out of time. It just reset itself. So, Ms. Vise, would you like to add anything before we go to questions?
Sure. I'm so excited to meet people like yourselves who are so uplifting and here for our students. HCC, we are a community. We are here to uplift our students and work with the community and mentor and help find them mentors, whether we're faculty or staff. We're here to help the community and help our students. And I'm really excited that I have, a new set relationships that I can send students to for assistance. We want to keep all of our students in and make sure that our students are successful. And with relationships such as y'all's, we can continue to do that and keep a well-rounded community that helps uplift our students and uplift the community. And that's what we're really here for is to make sure that the students succeed and to mentor them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the audience? We have time for a few questions. Oh, can we unmute Miss Hami?
Yes, and you can unmute yourself,
Miss
I believe.
Hami, can you unmute?
No, I don't have any question, but it was very, I really appreciate y'all. This was amazing. And I learned a lot today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'd like to add that, Carla
welcome.
really talked about the evolution of how the jobs are changing. All of y'all did, and and healthcare and AI, and luckily, as those change is adding those programs and adding more programs and more associate degrees for those changes, and works really closely with different agencies to make sure that they're up to date on what's going on in the workforce.
Well, I just want to say thank you for welcoming me and allowing me to participate with this program today. As we know, I think in this space, but just austerity. Um, the Black History Month was founded by Carter G. Woodson and the organization, which is called ASALA. But every Black History Month, they come up with a program. So this was something that Ms. Vise wanted to do. And I am glad that I was invited, to be a part of it. And I just think it says a lot about your interest in not just also wanting to highlight people who are in your community, who are working and willing to help your students. And as volunteers, I mean, I know Ms. Lane has a staffing agency, but I kind of get a strong sense that into community far beyond, role, as a leader, important organization. So every that came for Jana to put this together, other work that she does. So thank you for putting this together.
You are welcome, and thank you, Ms. Harris, amazing journalist, historian, Dr. Pearson. Your work, we didn't even get to talk about the movement of labor workers to, outside the city, another research topic of yours, and how the movement is changing from in the city to people moving outside the city. You have such great research information, and Ms. Lane, thank you for Lane staffing and telling us all about what's going on in your world and what's going on with labor here. And Mr. Jackson III, thank you again for coming in from the nonprofit world. All of y'all contribute so much to our community and to helping others around you. And thank you so much for coming and being a part of this discussion. I really look forward to working with y'all in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, I'm going to let y'all go and give you back 3 minutes of your day. And I want to thank all the participants for coming. And just in case, one of my things that I always do is I always ask people to fill out a survey, because we give out power banks at the end of each month. And if you fill it out, you get to be in the drawing for that. So I'm going to put that in there. And then if you really enjoyed our event today, please check out our upcoming events at our next on our website, and I hope to see all of y'all at upcoming events. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.